Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying.
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com, coming in to you on a Monday, May 23rd. Just a little bit of time left in May. Maybe that's good news for the LA Galaxy, but they still have 2 games before they close out for this month. They get smacked. They get smacked across the face, 3-0 by the Houston Dynamo. There's not a lot of good things to talk about that game, but we are going to talk about that game. There were some lineup changes, there was some rotation, some things all pointing to the Wednesday game again in the El Trafico against LAFC in the U.S. Open Cup round of 16. We'll preview that game a little bit, tell you maybe what you can expect whenever you get to the stadium. So we're going to hopefully talk you through, maybe talk you off the ledge a little bit today, this week on a Monday. Maybe that's how it's supposed to work. All right. To help me talk you through that and talk about a whole bunch of things LA Galaxy is the Man City man himself, Mr. Kevin Baxter. Kev, are you enjoying your Premier League title?
Yeah, before you went out to the Galaxy game, did you happen to see a little thing called the Premier League Championship decided on Sunday?
I did. I was watching little pieces of it, and what an exciting day it was, and lots of twists and turns. Leeds stayed up too. I mean, there was. Listen. It was funny. I was talking to Damien at the game, and Damien goes, people say that you need Pro-Rel and MLS, and he's like, you don't need Pro-Rel. And he goes, I mean, whenever you're celebrating and looking at a team that barely stays up like Leeds, it's exciting. He goes, but what are you, you're rooting for the 16th best team in the Premier League whenever you do that. You're rooting for mediocrities to stay above. It's an interesting storyline. It gives you something to pay attention to on both ends of the table. Sometimes it works out that way. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way. But it's at least interesting, and I found the whole day exhilarating and exciting.
Well, the man here, our guest, we have a guest host with us here in the South Bakersfield studios. Kevin De Bruyne made that great pass. And say hi, Kevin.
There he goes. Little bobblehead Kevin there.
Yeah.
2 Kevins. That's too many as far as I'm concerned.
Yes,
but yes.
Right. We're doubling up on Kevins here in Bakersfield. But, Ramon Alessandrini, who played most of his career in France, or at the beginning of his career anyways, where there is promotion relegation, told me he liked the MLS way better because he thought that you get to a playoffs, and if you're a good team, you get a second bite of the apple, you get a second chance. Teams at the end of the season are hot. They can go through. We've seen a lot of teams that didn't win the conference during the regular season go on and do really well in the playoffs. But another thing he said when the promotion and relegation battle start, especially relegation, teams play not to lose. They want 1 point. They don't want to go home without a point. And teams do not push forward. They do not try to win.
Right.
And he said that was noticeable. And that a lot of the games in France between lower table teams were really bad at the end of the season. He said in MLS, everybody plays to win. And he said, sure, you may have Seattle in first place and San Jose in last, but San Jose has no reason not to try to win that game. It could make their season. They're not going to move up the table. But if they beat the team that goes on to win the MLS Cup, that's a little bit of a flower, a feather in their cap.
Right.
So he liked that better.
I mean, I get it. I get the argument. I mean, there is an interesting sort of tidbit of that you can go through the entire regular season in Major League Soccer and it means relatively little. You get to the playoffs and all of a sudden now it's more of a tournament at the end. I'm still not sure how I balance that, but the bottom line is the season isn't balanced for any player or any team either. And so I'm probably okay with the playoffs, right? I still think there needs to be tweaks and changes to things. And as 30 teams arrive here soon, maybe we'll get into, 10 game conferences or 10 team conferences and have 3 conferences and figure out a way. But I mean, winning the regular season anymore is a function of schedule. a lot of times, just as much as it's a function of who the best team is. And so that still wears on me. I would much rather like a balanced, schedule, so that way you can be like, the person who wins the regular season actually wins something.
Well, I think the big thing with MLS is the financial setup with designated players and a salary cap. You don't see that in Europe, and that's why the Bundesliga has Bayern Munich winning 9 in a row, and Juventus and Milan dominating in Serie A, and Barcelona and Real Madrid, Liverpool and Man City. It's the same 1 or 2 teams every year because they play such a lengthy schedule with domestic cup competitions. In England, there's 2. They have Champions League or Europa League. They have a 38-game regular season. You really need a deep squad, and the only one that can afford a deep squad are the teams with a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, they're talking in Germany about having a playoff now because Bayern Munich is just too dominant. It's not fair to anybody else. And Bayern Munich, to their credit, actually said, we'll win the league and then we'll go win the playoff too. Fine, let's do that.
It would be an interesting little turn there at the end of the season. Anyway, Manchester City winning that game, it was very much in doubt, and then the last 12, 13 minutes of the game they came back. I actually had to turn it off because I was watching a couple games. We had to go run some errands, so we get in the car. 10 minutes after turning things off, we get in the car, and it was 2-0, and then all of a sudden it's 2-2, and then I'm listening as it goes 3-2. I'm like, what? It just happened in the 10 minutes that I was taking to get in the car. So lots of fun, lots of craziness.
You know what was great about that? Last thing about that is, people say, well, it'd be better if the 2 teams were facing one another. You know what? I liked it that way. The reason I liked it that way is because if Liverpool drew, Man City wins because it was 1 point difference and they had a huge advantage in the goal differential. So what Man City had to do is make sure it won, because if Liverpool won, they would go in front. If they were playing one another, I think the whole dynamic would change. And it was a lot of fun going from station to station, going back and forth, checking on the 2 games.
Right.
Yeah, it'd be great if they were on the field together, but it was just as much fun that they weren't.
Great. It was great, but we've also seen very boring last days of the EPL as well. So, I mean, let's not pretend like it's always this good. And,
nine times in the EPL era, which started in 92. So 9 times in 30 years, it's gone down to the last day of the season.
That's not very many times. All right. LA Galaxy 3-0 losers to the Houston
not going
Dynamo.
down to the end.
Yeah. It's weird because this game is going to get colored, I think, a lot by the FC Dallas game, and it should, right? Obviously, the LA Galaxy play their last 2 home games. They're outscored 6-1 in those last 2 home games. FC Dallas comes in, beats the ever-living crap out of the LA Galaxy with goals in about 12 or 13-minute span, or was it 23 minutes whenever you looked at it? I can't remember. There's a lot of numbers in my head. But, that FC Dallas game colors a lot of this Houston game, and I think the Houston game is a little bit different, but it doesn't really matter because the result is the same, right? It's no points. And it's something that we have been watching now with this team for a little while, Kevin, which is they're not good at home. They haven't been good at home.
They won at home in over a month. The last game was Nashville.
Yeah, the last game was Nashville. But they've now played, 6 games at home, and they have 9 points out of that. They have a better average points per game on the road right now than they do, at home. And I think there's a very clear definitive difference in how they play on the road and how they play at home, and it's really interesting to see them try to figure that out. I am not one of these people who's saying you should be jumping off a bridge right now. All right.
No, but you might want to go and try to find a bridge just so you have one identified when you need it.
You don't want to be searching for that bridge whenever you're going to finally need it, right?
You talked about this last game. They had the ball for 65 of the 90 minutes. They outshot the Dynamo 16-14, and the game was never even close. And the numbers you talked about, you have a lot of numbers. The numbers get worse. They've won just 2 of the last 7 games. The Galaxy have. They allowed 7 goals in their first 10 games of the season. They allowed 7 goals in their last 3 games.
Yeah.
They now have a negative goal differential for the first time this season.
Right.
They didn't score in that slide that they're in right now. They didn't score at all in 4 of those games. And they've been shut out 3 times. It's not going in the right direction.
No, it's not. It's not going in the right direction. There's lots of slides, and I think that you could listen. I saw so many mixed reactions on Twitter and social media. I'm not really sure how to react, but a lot of people were really angry that Greg rotated the lineup in this game, because he did rotate the lineup. All 3 designated players started on the bench.
But then they'd be complaining if he didn't have his starting lineup against LAFC. You can't have it both ways.
You can't. And at the same time, I will make a very, very clear and easy argument that the rotated lineup played better than whenever the 3 DPs came onto the field. So I don't know everybody complains that Greg runs out the same starting lineup over and over again, and he hasn't in the last probably 3 or 4 games. He's been rotating. He's had some injuries, had some suspensions, and I think all those things have hurt the LA Galaxy, because I think that when you look at when the LA Galaxy were playing consistently, they had the same lineup over and over again. It was consistent. They sort of knew what to expect, but the big issue, and the big issue has been, is their creativity. And I'm going to beat this drum until I die. It seems that Victor Vazquez is their only creator on this field. The LA Galaxy didn't start sucking at the end of the game, where they basically created no chances when 3 designated players came on the field, because they had 3 designated players come on the field. They sucked whenever 3 designated players come on the field, because Victor Vazquez went off right before the 3 designated players came on the field. And there's no easy way to reconcile that. Efrain Alvarez has been put in that position time and time again, and he got the start in this with Victor Vazquez. And Vazquez and Efrain Alvarez do okay off of each other, but it's really the creativity from Vazquez that helps Efrain be even a semi-playmaker in the areas that he has been in. Because as soon as Victor Vazquez came off that field, the LA Galaxy regressed into the same thing that we've seen, which was pinball in the box, trying to run through a back 10 or 11 from Houston Dynamo, who are now set in the ways because it's 3-0 already. So the Galaxy have a huge problem, and we've been talking about it, and we said when Victor Vazquez comes back, the creativity will come back. He came into the last 20, 30 minutes of the game against Minnesota, and we saw the chances start to creep up. He starts this game. The LA Galaxy had plenty of chances to score in this game. They didn't. And then as soon as he goes off, they basically didn't generate any chances. Go back and look. It's funny. Sometimes you can tell a lot from the highlights about what they show and what they don't show. And if you go back and watch the highlights, it's like it starts and it basically goes, oh, the 11th minute, oh, the 20th minute, 22nd minute, 31st minute, 39th minute, 44th minute, 55th minute, 56, 58, 62, 81. Game over. As soon as Vazquez comes off, there are no more highlights. That's it. Game over. Have a nice day. See you later. There's one in the 81st where Cabral got a pinballed ball that sort of bounced in front of the goal, and he was super tight angle on it and, shuffled it towards the front of goal. The Galaxy aren't scoring goals because they're not finishing their chances, but they're not creating chances. And for me, Joveljic starting this game, Kevin, was great. I thought he was as perfect as a 9 up there as really you could ask. He got in some good positions. He put people in good positions of plays off the ball. He made intelligent runs, and with Vazquez on the field, they found him. That's not something that we've seen throughout this entire stretch. And if the Galaxy are going to try to, depend on a 36-year-old Victor Vazquez, then they have huge problems. That's a big problem.
Yeah, and they're two. You talk about the squad rotation. They're 2 designated players are older than God. They can't play 5 games in 2 weeks. Victor Vazquez has had injury problems, and he's an older player. That, to me, goes back to one thing that I've talked about and thought about a lot this year is I think this team is just poorly constructed. They spent $11 million on their attackers, the most expensive combination of forwards in the league, I believe.
It's like
right?
$12 million. It's like 12 something. But yes,
it's the most expensive. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they have a pretty good defense at times. I mean, I told you before I was a little agnostic. I don't think they're as bad as they are. They have played the last 3 games, but I don't think they're as good as they were at the beginning of the season. So
Nick DePuy had a lot to do with the bad defense on Sunday against Houston.
As Houston was going forward, you saw his back a lot when he was trying to chase somebody down. But I think the team is poorly constructed, and Greg has finally hit on that where he talked about they need to get a midfielder in the next transfer window.
Don't say it though. Don't talk about that. It makes because I have to deal with everybody who's going to say whenever Greg says, "Oh, we need a defensive midfielder," I have to deal with everybody over here going, "What is he looking at?" And I agree, by the way. He should be looking at a central attacking midfielder. He should be looking at a cam, and keeps talking about a defensive midfielder. But
let's
continue.
Start this rumor with Mbappe coming back to PSG. I think that opens up. Messi could be on his way out. And
yeah, exactly.
Could be, but he needs a midfielder, and I think some of us saw this at the beginning of the season. We were hoping Vazquez might be able to play a little bit more. Yeah, I just think the team is poorly constructed, and Greg said some interesting things afterwards. He talked about how the team tries to be a little bit too pretty. They want to play the beautiful game. I don't know if that was an attack at Costa or not. He said they want to try to play the beautiful game. They're always
I think it was an attack at Alvarez. I think that's absolutely 100%.
That would be good too.
Yeah.
But he talked about them wanting to play the beautiful game and wanting to make that extra pass and not wanting to suffer, not wanting to grind out wins. He said sometimes you have to win ugly, but we have to. What we do, Greg's saying the Galaxy has to do right now is just win, period, however they do it.
Here, I have that
Go ahead.
audio. Let me play that audio because I think that's a good part of this. So here's Greg Vanney after the game talking about winning nice, and that's unacceptable. Here it is.
This group and the message in that group is we can play nice and lose games. It's unacceptable. We have to find the ugly and the fight and the competitive side and the killer instinct to win games, to take what can be nice moments of soccer and turn them into real winning soccer, which is the hard, nasty work that gets done in front of the goal. Who wants to get on the end of things in front of the goal, and who's going to run hard, and that's the discussion with us, and asking everybody to step up and be the best version of themselves and to take that responsibility. And that's they're with it. They're with that. It was a great conversation quickly as a group after, and we know we have a quick turnaround with a big ask for the next couple of days. But when you're in this moment and your rival in a knockout game is in front of you, it asks a big question for you to turn around and find that fight real fast, which I think the guys were all a little embarrassed with the outcome today, and there's an opportunity in a couple of days to come out and put out a real battle.
There you go.
Well, a couple of things about that. We're not at the Guillermo Barros-Scalotto stage yet, where he would come into every press conference after a loss and talk about all the things he told the team that they ignored. It was always, I had the beautiful game plan and they didn't pay any attention to me.
Right.
There is beginning to develop a pattern where after a loss, Greg will come in and say something like you just said. You just wonder, why isn't the message getting through? If you know this and it's so simple and that's all it takes, why is that message not getting through? Why are the people not?
They don't have the players. I mean, you know that. That's why they don't have the players to do it. I mean, I think that they expected that Efrain Alvarez would be a player that they could rely on to be a creator with Victor Vazquez. And I asked Victor afterwards, and in a way, it's an unfair question. It's not unfair that I asked it, but it's unfair that anybody would expect that Victor Vazquez would tell the absolute truth on that. Because I said, hey, Victor, whenever you're not on the field, we see you creating. Whenever you're not on the field, who's creating? Who can create? And he's like, oh, well, of course, we have plenty of players. We have Efrain, we have Douglas, we have Ryan, we have Marky, all these. He's listing off all these people. I'm like, no, they can't. We've seen it. And we've looked at that.
You called him Marky, by the way.
No, that's what Victor said.
Okay, right. He's in the dressing room with the guy every day. He should know his name.
Yeah, I'm just saying, Victor has known him long enough to be able to call him Marky. I don't know why this is so hard to do. Like, the guys who call him Marky are guys who have known him since he was a little tiny wee thing, and they get to say it. Me, I will call him Mark. So anyway, yes, that was the whole deal. But I mean, that's the bottom line is, listen, Cabral is not going to create for you. He's a runner on the outside, and he's supposed to be a finisher. The Galaxy don't have any. Grand Sur doesn't get enough crap from people, and I don't understand why. He was in this game. He had one good shot. It was a good shot too, by the way, but it was also from a corner kick, and nobody decided to mark him, and so Alvarez just passed him the ball in the box, and he took one touch, and he ripped it with his right foot, and it was saved by Clark. Clark made a couple good saves. But the bottom line is they don't have anybody who's scoring right now, and it's not just the scoring problem. It's the creation problems. Who's creating these chances?
Who is the team leader in assists?
Raheem Edwards, right? Still.
An outside back. Now,
Yeah.
I understand in today's soccer, the outside backs push up. I get it. I understand that. But when your outside back leads your team in assists, that is probably not a good sign for your midfield.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I usually don't have a problem with it, but if Sam Grandsir was supposed to be brought in as a winger and let's say he's not everybody says, he should be the starter. Okay, then prove it. Show me why you should be the starter, because right now you're not scoring goals and you're not assisting. Tell Cabral, same thing. Tell me why you should be in there. You do something nobody else does, which is you have some straight line speed and you're able to get in behind, but nobody's going to play you the ball, so I don't know why you really care. Joveljic, a great example. Put him in some good spots and he got an okay chance at a couple of them, but he was created like almost as a provider a little bit on the night. But how many times did they play the ball into his feet with his back to goal? All the time. That's not the place you put him in. The LA Galaxy are missing the players to accomplish their game plan. And maybe that's on Greg Vanney, right? I am of the opinion that Greg Vanney created most of this team right now, right? We'll say that, certainly I know that Klein and Karofsky are going to blame him if everything goes wrong. Greg's going to get blamed. Doesn't matter whether they force Costa on him or...
They'll take credit if this team is playing into November.
Yeah. Yeah.
Klein and Jovan.
Yeah, no, absolutely. By the way, somebody says Grandsir doesn't get a lot of crap because he isn't a DP, and at least this seems to play hard. Cabral runs harder than Grandsir most of the time. Grandsir doesn't make as smarter runs, and he doesn't play as good a defense. All right, Grandsir is more dangerous on the side. And by the way, Grandsir is making $900,000. $900,000. Kevin Cabral's making 1.6. The differences there are not grand in the whole thing. And Cabral's a young Grandsir. Did I say no? Oh, grand.
You said
All the grand. Yeah. No. So bottom line is, ultimately, up to a certain point, how much you're making, especially the guys in the middle of that roster, don't matter as much to me. It's who's going to play right now, because everybody says, well, start somebody else. Do something different. Tell me what Greg needs to do different, besides maybe go to a 3-5-2, which Galaxy really haven't shown a lot of success in, or a 4-4-2.
Why would you go to a 3-5-2 and load up your midfield when you don't have a midfield to start with? I think maybe you go to a 5-0-5. Why
is Greg, though, and this was one of the things, there's a couple things going on here that we sort of have to break down. And the whole defensive midfielder thing from Greg Vanney is not new, right? He said, oh, well, I think we need a true defensive midfielder because he wants to free up Mark Delgado. Is he trying to tell me? It feels like he's trying to tell me that Mark Delgado is a 10 then. Is a playmaker, is a guy who is going to be able to link up and make those plays and make those passes, and they're asking him, to Greg, he says, we're asking him to sit back more. But does Delgado feel like the playmaker the LA Galaxy are missing? Does he never, ever float into those spots, ever, Kevin, in any game? So he's not, like, wouldn't you think that if you were a true 10 or a true playmaker or a guy who links up, that on occasion you would get yourself out of position to link up and play through people, right? I mean, you would be like, hey, this is my chance. I'm going to get forward. I'm going to show everybody that I can link up. We haven't seen that.
Well, and we don't know what they're doing in training. But to the point in the chat room, or the message you got about the salaries, one guy at DP, we expect more from him. Yeah, you should. You and I have had this conversation a lot over the years, where the payroll is what the payroll is, and if you put all your DPs on the bench and you win, it's still the same payroll. If all your DPs play and you lose, it's still the same payroll. But having said that, it is a league with a salary cap. And it is a league that is very difficult to win in because of the financial rules. And so that's why I go back to, again, $12 million for your attackers, and you have 13 goals, and you've been shut out 4 times. So put Chicharito on the bench. I don't think he's the problem, but I'm just saying, put all the DPs on the bench and put the backups on. They're not going to score. You would guess they're not going to score. That's why they're backups. But something needs to be done, because you're spending a lot of money for attackers and they're not attacking.
I was listening to some analysis on the Galaxy, and somebody was saying, hey, the Galaxy just need to wait for some of those bad contracts to go away. And I'm like, how can you sit there and say that with a straight face, that the Galaxy have bad contracts? It may be true, but the bottom line is they put these contracts in place for these seasons, right? This isn't like, oh, well, I got saddled with a bad contract. No. You gave a bad contract. That's what happened. And so to sit there and say, well, you just have to wait out some of these bad contracts, it seems false. And we haven't even gotten to Douglas Costa. And it's almost not fair to talk about Chicharito or Cabral or Douglas Costa in this game, because they came into a game, and as soon as Victory Vazquez went out, I'm like, well, the game's over. I mean, it has been over, by the way. It has been over. It was 2-0. The Galaxy got scored on whenever they had 10 men on the field because Sega Koulibaly came off. By the way, the biggest issue of this whole game is Sega Koulibaly getting injured, because the Galaxy do not have an answer for that. He's being evaluated. We don't know whether or not it's serious, or whether or not he'll be available for Wednesday, or whether or not he'll be available, or whether they're going to shut him down for the break. Sasha Kleshin shut down for the break, it seems like right now, with his hip flexor, and Eric Zavaleta has a groin issue. All right, so
that break, by the way, is a big deal, because you got one league game and this U.S. Open Cup, which, again, I think, I know you're going to tell me I'm wrong, but I think you approach this game differently if you're playing San Jose,
yes.
Even if it's still a quarterfinal.
Mm-hmm.
This game is going to be is much bigger because of who they're playing. And, if Sega has any problem at all, I hope they don't play him in this game. I know the temptation is going to be there. Don't play him in this game. Don't play him over the weekend. Let him rest. He gets a full month off and misses one league game.
Yeah.
That's pretty huge.
Yeah, there's 20 days between the Austin game and the game against I forget who it's against. Actually, I have the schedule here, but the next game in June, it's like June 18th or something like that.
So if he doesn't play this week, then he gets a full month off to recover. When do you get a full month off in the middle of a season?
Yep.
That never happens. I think they're being very smart with Kleshin, but you're right. I mean, with Eric Zavaleta out, and you need some help at center back. We found that out, in the game with Houston. If Sega can't go, or if Sega is kind of on the bubble,
then
the
Depew starts again. Yeah, but Depew's going to start again. I mean, that's the whole thing. And,
I think he would have to.
and that was a huge problem against Houston. Depew's poor defending and his poor man marking and getting dribbled through cost Sega trying to come over and help him all the time. And when he did that, you saw the defense collapse 2 or 3 times against Houston. You know, I'm going to say this, and I'll be fine. I'll take the hits. The 2 goals that Houston scored in the second half were absolute golazos. They were so good.
Golazos.
They were so, but it doesn't matter. They were so good. Yes, there could have been more pressure on the first one. The second one was a good move, and I'm amazed that anybody hit it from that sharp of an angle and was able to roof it over Bond. The big problem is the first goal that they gave up, right? It was Edwards cheating forward and then the LA Galaxy giving the ball up, and it's Efrain Alvarez trying to thread a pass into Joveljic that Joveljic couldn't come back and get in time. The ball gets picked off, and they play it in behind Edwards because Edwards is moving up the field. We saw the same thing against Julian Araujo a couple games ago, where Julian Araujo left too early, got up the field, and there's a counterattack, and it comes in behind him, right? Those are the mistakes. But then on that one, Bond kicks the, he basically makes the save, and he kicks it straight out into the center, right? He can't do that. I know it's sort of this like weird changeup where you don't expect the guy's going to hit it right at you, Kevin, because he has the whole goal, right? And it's sort of like you're almost handcuffed whenever the ball gets hit right at you, but Bond has to do better. Bond hasn't played well in the last probably 3 or 4 games. Maybe even longer. We've seen a dip in his form. His distribution being put under a lot more pressure. Teams are smarter about it. They are pressuring him more. And then the LA Galaxy playing out of the back have caused themselves some problems. If you're going to play out of the back, you're going to have problems on occasion. The LA Galaxy are getting burned by them. And they should have been burned 2 or 3 other times in this game as well, just trying to play in tight spaces. And the Galaxy have not done well with that.
Well, and what you're talking about is teams making adjustments. You said that teams are not pressuring Bond, and they are because, he sometimes has problems under pressure. A lot of this stuff explains why there's this Jekyll and Hyde personality to this team, where they play really well. Opponents figure out what they're doing. They start to pressure Bond. They try to force him to play out of the back. He gets himself into bad situations, and he gives up 7 goals in 3 games. The Galaxy now have to adjust back. Now that teams are doing different things to them, they need to adjust. But the silver lining to this really, really dark black cloud is that a victory Wednesday takes away a lot of this bad mojo. They've been booed off the field in the last 2 home games.
Yeah.
A victory over LAFC in the U.S. Open Cup. Galaxy have been beyond the quarterfinals. This will be a quarterfinal game. They've been beyond the quarterfinals of the U.S. Open Cup just once since 2006.
Right.
So it would be a big deal in the U.S. Open Cup. They would be closer to actually playing for a trophy, which Greg Vanney wants to do. But, so you lose to Houston, and you lose, you give up 6 goals in the last 2 home games. You beat LAFC. I don't think a lot of people are going to remember those last 2 home games.
I mean, it helps, right? I will tell you this, that if we're just looking at the general sort of feeling that the LA Galaxy should have fan heading into LAFC, I know everybody wants to pull the panic switch. Rarely has form dictated what happens in an El Trafico. If that was the case, the LA Galaxy would have lost at Dignity Health Sports Park multiple times. Like maybe 3 or 4 times whenever you look at this sort of undefeated streak. It means nothing. And it was funny. I was talking to one of the Galaxy employees after the game, and we were talking in the TV studio, which we were down in the TV studio first time since 2020 at the beginning of the season in 2020, where we've been down underneath the stands and in the TV studio. So talking to Greg afterwards was in person, and talking to Victory Vazquez afterwards was in person. That was different, and it was nice. And we got Greg to talk for 21 minutes, which is not something you would have happen on Zoom. So Zoom alone, let's put it that way. Greg loves to talk. We know that. So there's time to ask him questions. There's time to sort of probe these different things that are going out there. I was talking to one of the Galaxy employees afterwards, and they were sort of saying, well, what do you think? Do you think this is a kick in the pants for them? That this is motivation now, that they're like, we can't be this bad. And now they go into El Trafico and the whole deal. I'm like, it doesn't matter. And they're like, well, what do you mean it doesn't matter? I'm like, the form has never mattered in this game. It does not matter. Whatever happened against Houston, whatever happened against Dallas, however you want to group that in your mind and say that the LA Galaxy played bad, it does not matter going into an El Trafico. It will never matter. I don't know, unless that changes sometime soon. We have never seen form dictate outcomes of these games. That being said, could the Galaxy go out and lay an egg? They are perfectly capable of doing so, right? I mean, you should have zero faith in the fact that they're just going to show up and battle. But the one reason the LA Galaxy have been successful at Dignity Health Sports Park in the El Trafico is they've always been willing to suffer more than LAFC. That is the reason why. They've always been able to go in there, and they've always been willing to put it more on the line, break bones, risk it all, doesn't matter, throw it all there, have something to prove against LAFC. So
and that's their only chance in this game, heart. Because if you do one of those things where you break down, how they do before, like Super Bowl or whatever, break down the units of the team, LAFC dominates everything. I mean, they have the momentum, they're winning well. Vella's back.
They're not. They are not. They do not tell me they have the momentum. They won one game against Columbus. They lost their previous two.
Well, they went across the country and played in a rainstorm.
And Columbus handed them a victory. That was the most toothless Columbus team I have seen in a long time. Somebody said that the LA Galaxy should go get Tim Vazquez, right, who's the general manager at Columbus. And I'm like, after the way that Columbus has sort of been playing the last 3 or 4 weeks, I 100% think that he would be open for a move somewhere. But yes, continue.
I think if you look at LAFC's front three with Brian Rodriguez back and Arango and Vela, take them over Galaxy's forwards right now. You look at the midfield with the way Acosta's been playing and Cifuentes. I'll take the midfield. The defense has been really hard to break down. Crapeau's been playing pretty good in goal. I just don't see where the Galaxy rank in any of those 4 departments.
Right.
But
they've already played each other. They already played each other once, and the Galaxy beat them. Same sort of conditions. So I agree.
They did, but the Galaxy were in a much different spot then. The Galaxy were not coming off two home games where they were booed off the field. They were not coming off 3 games where they gave up 7 goals. They were not coming off 1 goal in their last 3 games. They were in a much better position.
Yeah.
But like I said, you said the form doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
I agree.
Yeah.
And if they win this game as bad as they're playing, they have one more with Austin. That's a toss up because it's at home. I just think that this game could give them a little bit of a skip in their step heading into the break. And you don't want to go in that break having lost 4 in a row.
No. And listen, when we're looking at just the overall depths that the LA Galaxy have reached, they really haven't reached any depths. You're just not happy with the way they're playing right now. They're some pretty short. They're winless in their last 3. They were winless in 9 in 2022. Now, or in 2021. Winless in 9 starts with winless in 3. I'll agree with that, right? I mean, that's an easy one to sort of say. You're like, okay, I get it. You could be heading in that direction. But I'll also say this. So the LA Galaxy have given up 14 goals so far this year,
yep,
right?
7 in their last 3 games.
Yeah, 9 of those goals came in 3 games, right? So when the LA Galaxy lose, right, and whenever they're playing some good teams, they tend to get blown out. Dallas, I think, is a good team. I don't know about Houston. Listen, the expected goals for this game was actually fairly even. Houston had a little bit of edge on that. Was just barely even, just to show you how outrageous the 2 goals they scored in the second half were. That left-footed cutback and hitting it from about, 22 yards out with a left foot. I would have liked Grandsir to step up and push a little bit after he had tracked back, but he just made a long run. Edwards had to stay because there was an overlap on the outside, so he couldn't go chase him. Maybe Mark Delgado could have come across and gotten some pressure on it as well, but he was also running back and had just stopped whenever there was the cut back and sort of coming in. And when you cut back like that after everybody's running, it tends to freeze a defense. So they froze, and then he unleashes a ridiculous left foot. And then that third goal, the short angle little step over on Derek Williams right after Derek Williams had sort of come into the game for Sega Koulibaly and did that whole thing. It's a great goal too. I mean, those are the Galaxy have been in those exact positions, and in fact, they were in the exact positions in both those, and didn't even get shots off, which is another problem for me. So
Kleshton said after the Houston game that he liked the fact that they could come out and play after a couple days later because you get to go back.
That was Dallas after Dallas.
After Dallas, to redeem yourself. Go out and redeem yourself. That's the situation the Galaxy are in now. This is a perfect chance for redemption. They're at home in front of the fans that just booed them, playing their arch rival from 11 miles away. This is the perfect situation. And again, I'm a big believer in the mental side of the game. If they win this game, I think they go into the break feeling better, regardless of what happens with Austin. If they lose this game and then potentially lose the Austin game or don't win, draw,
right?
They go in 20 days without a game, just practicing, without a chance to redeem themselves. That's going to be way heavy on a lot of guys, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think it always does, right? And it's just, I don't know. There's so many. I am of the belief that the LA Galaxy team that got rotated and played through the first 55 minutes or so was an okay team. They allowed 1 goal, which was a bad goal to allow, and maybe they could have allowed more, but they should have scored 2 or 3 as well. For me, the Efrain Alvarez experiment is over, and yes, you can certainly criticize me as a hypocrite as I sit there and say the Cabral one isn't. I've been waiting for Efrain Alvarez. This is his year. We actually, in a group text, there's a hashtag called "This is his year," and it's all related to Alvarez, and it's been going on for like multiple years now. This is his year. But when you watch him consistently run around his right foot over and over and over again, there's problems. When you watch him consistently dribble out of bounds, which is my favorite thing he does, there are problems. He's making what, $600,000 or $700,000 now? It's not a small amount,
and
right?
It's a long-term deal.
And it is, right? But the LA Galaxy, ultimately, he is one of the tradable assets they have, or at least he will be a tradable asset if they decide to trade him now. If they wait any longer, then he will be an untradeable asset. There's still the Mexican national team links and all those fun things. So for me, Alvarez is a problem. Cabral is a problem because you need to get something out of a young DP. I am still of the belief that eventually, one day, sometime, he's going to get it all together. I know there's no reason for me to believe that. I see too much stuff and I see what the coaching staff is. But bottom line, the plug is going to get pulled, sooner rather than later, whenever that all happens. But he's also a long-term contract, right? Grandsir, making $900,000. Does relatively little for the LA Galaxy. Plays hard. I like it. He's sort of like Ramon Alessandrini in a way, which he plays really hard. He's just missing all the finishing that Ramon Alessandrini does. And from his position and his ability to cut inside, I would like to see more goals from him. Leerdam had, I think, one of the highest percentage shots in this game as well. Kicked it right at Steve Clark. Alvarez had the one where he has his left foot on it, but quite honestly, if he just lets that ball run across him to the right-hand side, it's unlikely Clark can get to the near post in time in order to save that whenever Joveljic played him in back behind the goal. So, Ryan Raveloson has been on Greg Vanney's radar as not doing enough. And you can see him being frustrated. I think out of everybody so far, Greg Vanney is more frustrated with Raveloson more than anybody else.
Well, why do you think that is? Do you think that last year he seemed to be one of the players that I thought was more steady than a lot of guys? And I think it maybe has a lot to do with he's not really sure what his role is. And it's, again, that unsettled midfield. Is Marky the guy that's pushing up? Is he the guy that's pushing up? Is someone's...
Yeah, I know. Yellow card for you. Yes. Yeah, that was correct. You showed yourself a yellow card.
No, you got a straight red then.
No, it's not going to happen.
There we go. Straight red. Maybe Raveloson doesn't know what he's supposed to do.
Whenever Greg goes on about a defensive midfielder and talks about that, there is a hint that for some reason that he thinks he's playing Delgado out of position and Raveloson out of position. I don't know if I believe in that, but there's something to that. But I also don't think that how many midfielder, who else so you're going to get another defensive midfielder so Alvarez doesn't play anymore. I'm trying to figure out who the LA Galaxy's best starting 11 is right now. If you can put any lineup on the field right now, Chicharito starts, right? If you're only going to play one forward, Chicharito starts.
But I wouldn't.
Okay, you would play Joveljic and Chicharito together in a 4-4-2.
Yes, I would.
Okay, so you have 4 midfielders that make up. So give me your 4 midfielders. Are you going to put Raveloson and Delgado into the holding spots?
Yes, but I would explain what I want each of them to do.
Okay. That doesn't help.
Mission.
That doesn't help, I don't think. But okay, so you're going to put them there. So then who's on your left wing if you're going to do is it Grandsir or is it Cabral?
I think I would rotate them. It would be like a platoon position, and then I would use Acosta on the other side. So
Douglas Costa would be on the right-hand side. So there you go. Yeah. So you don't have any playmaker on that field. Congratulations. Good job. You have the same problem the LA Galaxy have right now.
Mr. Delgado would be my playmaker. I would have Raveloson be back as a traditional holding midfielder, and I would have Mark Delgado be the point guard, the guy bringing the ball up and trying to start the offense. By the way, I wouldn't have Chicharito and Dejan play side by side. I think I would drop Dejan back, and he'd probably be outside the box. And
that would be wrong. That would be wrong too, because Chicharito's the one who plays better with his back to goal and drops in and creates plays. So your one chance you had at creating a playmaker, and that was having Chicharito drop deep and come into there and lead for Dejan, who likes to lead on the front line more. So I listen. I
still think Chicharito's a poacher, and when he's at his best, his most goals.
Absolutely, he will be in the box. Don't worry, he'll be there whenever it all breaks down because he's going to dish and then he's going to run in. That's sort of how he works, right? We've seen that over and over again. But no, and then the back line. Let's just finish it off. It's Raheem Edwards, and then it's Derek Williams, and it's Sega Koulibaly, and it's Julian Araujo on the right hand side, and then is it Jonathan Bond?
Someone named Jonathan.
Yeah. So, but those are the issues that I think the LA Galaxy have right now. And as much as you want to, whine and complain on Twitter, and I see it all. And by the way, not my fault. I don't make the LA Galaxy lose. Stop blaming me. All right. There seems to be it's always my favorite thing is that as soon as the Galaxy start losing, it's the media's fault. And it's like we ask questions every single week, and we ask questions I asked Greg why he thinks there's a difference between the home mentality and the away mentality, and whether or not he thinks there's a thing. He says, absolutely there's a thing. Well, no, really? Because we all can see there's a thing. Duh. There was a reason somebody asked him about the positions in the midfield again. The whole reason that there's a question is that there was a conversation that was had that Greg Vanney sort of was talking about, and I think he was, and I can share this, that there's an acknowledgement in general that Costa and Alvarez can't be your playmakers. And I think that's where people are saying, oh, well, then he realizes then he needs a central attacking midfielder too. Well, no, that's not what he said. So I'm telling you, I got the relay. I know what he said. He said that he doesn't believe that, long-term Costa and Alvarez can be the playmakers, can be that guy that's sort of set around, right? It's like, okay, so that means Alvarez has to go to the bench because Costa will play out on the wing. Okay, so now you have that. So then everybody says, well, that means you need a central attacking midfielder. No, that's not what Greg Vanney is saying. Greg Vanney is saying he wants to move Delgado forward and get a defensive midfielder. By moving Delgado forward, he thinks he has the playmaker there.
I just said that. I want Marky to play forward and Relison to play back.
Yeah, I think you're both wrong. I mean, go back and look at his playing time at Toronto. I don't think Delgado was a playmaker.
You realize that Greg Vanney has won an MLS Cup, right? As a manager.
Does Greg Vanney know that I've watched 3 MLS Cups in person? Like, I would that's not true. I've watched 4 MLS Cups in person, right? So, I mean, I also have experience. I don't agree with him in this, that the answer to all their problems right now in creation is Victory Vazquez. Okay? That's great until you realize that Victor's 35, 36 years old and that he can't play. And I even asked him because I think Damien asked him how he was feeling, if he was feeling good. And he was like, yeah, I feel good. It sucks to come back. But he didn't really talk about it enough. And I'm like, but you feel fine? And I was trying to say, can you go 90 minutes? Because the Galaxy needs you to go 90 minutes, right? That's the thing that needs to happen. Victor Vazquez can't come off the field right now. And until the LA Galaxy figure out who else is going to be that playmaker, who's going to be that creator, they're going to be stuck in the same thing. And they're putting a lot of pressure on their defense. And there's a difference in this home and away mentality. Why are they more successful right now on the road, Kevin? Why, if I said the LA Galaxy are more successful on the road right now, which the numbers prove out, why are they more successful on the road?
Because those guys love the hotel points.
Yes, it's their Starwood points, right? They feel
good when they get those points. They look at their budget at their account and they go, "Let's go."
They're like, my wife and I, after the season, we are gonna go hit up some nice places in like Cabo, maybe Vancouver. They're gonna get around a little bit. The reason the LA Galaxy are more successful on the road, I won't say so successful, but more successful, is because they're sitting there and they grind out things. They know it's going to be a grind. They know it's going to be difficult. So they sit there and go, okay, we're going to be stingy. That's why the games don't look good. That's why the LA Galaxy go out there and they grind out against Minnesota and they finally earn a penalty kick, which, by the way, if Vazquez is on the field, they probably create more chances and actually score a goal before that. But they create that. Sasha Kleshman comes on, helps create a penalty kick, all that fun stuff that happens. Penalty kick, the LA Galaxy score, and then, then what do? They give up a defensive side on the other side with technically down to 10 men, which is an interesting thing that happened twice in 2 games where the LA Galaxy get odd-manned on the field for a goal. So that's why they have that mindset that they want to be, as Greg would say, sort of getting down and dirty and doing the dirty work and being, stingy with everything and not giving things up and not trying to win the game in the first 15 minutes. When they come at home, it's not the case. And you can see it. I'm not going to use the Houston game as an example because I think Depue's issue on defending cost the LA Galaxy a lot in that game. And so I'm less worried about the defense, but I don't like the individual mistakes that we have been seeing that have been leading to very easy, clear-cut chances for other teams. And that's part of the midfield being smarter in where they're going and also the outside backs being a little bit smarter.
But I do think it works much better. Whether you want to bring in another guy you think Greg's right or wrong, telling Relison and Delgado, this is what I want you to do, would help.
Yes, but then that assumes that Greg Vanney is not telling them what to do right now.
Well, they're not playing like they know what they're supposed to be doing.
What did he say about the defensive or the defense or that midfield? He said, hey, we've tried a bunch of things. We tried elevating Delgado a little bit further. We tried to double pivot. We've tried a bunch of different things in order to do it. In all cases, Kevin, they were given a game plan of which to execute and been told what to do. So yes, Victor Vazquez says whenever he came out, and this is a good line to use, which is, it's not the coach's fault. They gave us a game plan, and we need to execute that right now. And that seems to be the problem, which is and I think Greg is trying to make little adjustments right now. I'm not saying they're working, because the only adjustment, by the way, I can solve everybody's problems. Just clone Victor Vazquez and have him be like 5 or 6 years younger, and not a problem. LA Galaxy will be just fine.
Yeah. When did you guys get married?
I know, it's because it's so obvious. Just go back and watch the last 2 games. When Vazquez is on the field, the LA Galaxy create chances. When he's not, they don't. It was dead, Kevin. Everybody should be upset with the way that game finished. But it has less to do, well, see, this is the problem. I'll say it has less to do with the 3 DPs and totally has to do with who was the creator. But you also have Douglas Coston, who should be a creator. And you also have Efrain Alvarez, who went crickets over there as soon as Vazquez went off the field. And you also have guys like Kevin Cabral, who should be able to stretch and create some chances from that right-hand side, right? And you also have Chicharito, which if you can ever get him in a spot, I mean, why, you look at Chicharito coming to that game and it was like, oh, why even bother? Why even bother putting him out on the field? Because there was nothing there.
Well, you talk about finding out what Costin can and can't do. During the winter, I got tipped off that the Galaxy were about to sign Costin. I got the chance to talk to Vanney before the hype train. When the hype train was still in the station, they were still in the beginning stages. But I asked him why he liked Costa, because again, I'm agnostic on Costa too. He's 32 years old. He's been hurt a lot. Greg was just, oh my God, he was over the moon, almost like you and Vazquez. He was talking about all the things that Costa can do. He can play anywhere. He can do anything. He really had high hopes. I think he really felt like this guy was going to be a game changer. And I just don't think he found a place to play. Certainly not the playmaker they thought he would be.
Do you think, and this is always the question, because the LA Galaxy are playing this obfuscation game, which is, we're not going to tell you who's in charge, but we're going to pretend it's Greg Vanney. But do you think Greg Vanney pulled the trigger on Douglas Costa? Do you think he was the one who said, okay?
No. And I'll say that because I think Greg, if he's not, Greg Vanney was very convincing. He really made it seem like this was the guy of his dreams. But the Galaxy have this history. After Legwicki left, Bruce is still there, and the new management comes in with Beckerman and Chris Klein taking a little bit more of a stepped up role. We know for a fact in talking to people that the Bruce and Sarakin and that group did not want Gio. He was brought in for public relations reasons. They did not want Gerard. He was brought in to sell jerseys. There were a number of players that were brought in during that time that those guys did not want, and management forced them on them. The same management is here, different coach, same management. I have no evidence that say that Costa was someone that somebody else wanted to bring in, but he's not working the way the coach thought he would work. And we know that there's this history here, and that the same people that did Gio and Gerard are still here. It's possible. It certainly hasn't worked out the way he wanted to. And by the way, before we get too far away from that Minnesota game, Collection takes the penalty kick, which is good. He's taken penalty kicks before. I don't have a problem with that, except was Chicharito still on the field? Because when your striker is struggling, don't you try to get him a goal? I mean, wouldn't that have been an opportunity where Chicharito steps up, takes that penalty kick, and maybe wakes himself up?
Yes, except Chicharito sucks at penalty kicks. So that's one of those where it's like, I don't have a problem. Chicha's not a penalty kick guy. It's not his thing.
Say it to his face.
He knows. You could say it. I was talking with somebody about this, and they're like, it's whenever we're asking questions, we're always trying to do it. It's like, it's tough to do it without assigning blame yourself, right? As a reporter, I try to stay away from that as well, which is like, well, Greg, Nick DePuy really sucked tonight. I don't like doing that. That's leading too much, right? It's like, hey, Greg, what did you think of Nick DePuy's game tonight? And then he can tell you what he thought of it, and he can figure out how he wants to approach that, right? That's how you do it. But I'm also always of the opinion, these guys know. They know who played well and who didn't play well. They watched the same game. They saw the thing. Rarely do you have a guy who you're like, hey, I mean, listen, I've seen it happen, and I know who does it a lot, and I also know that it ticks players off whenever they do it. But I've seen players be like, no, I thought he was fine. The whole deal. Sasha Kleshman said something about, Chase Gasper after the Minnesota game, because I think, was it the Minnesota game wherever he got burned a little bit? Anyway, it was a whole thing, and he goes, listen, Chase knows that he needs to be better. It wasn't the Minnesota game, it was the Dallas game.
It was the Dallas game.
Yeah. He said, Chase knows he needs to be better. He goes, but you know what? He's just coming back. He's just getting in. He goes, that's our guy, and we're going to back him. Right? He goes, I'm not going to, basically Sasha's like, I'm not going to throw him under the bus right now. There was another interesting thing about Chicha though, and something we learned. So after the game on the broadcast, Spectrum Sportsnet had it. Nikki was talking to Chicharito after the game. And if you've listened to that audio, if not, you can go on cornerofthegalaxy.com. We have that press conference up. So that way you can watch that. It's Greg Vanney, it's Victory Vazquez, and then it's Chicharito. And they pulled the video from Spectrum so that way we could have it. So it's all there. You can listen to Chicharito. And Chicharito was calling people out and basically saying, this is embarrassing. We can't do this. We need to be better. We need to be better. We need to have a killer mentality. All the things that he should say. The interesting thing is that Spectrum had requested that Mark Delgado come talk to them after the game, right? And the reason was that Chicha had played, the last 30 minutes or so. Nothing really had happened. A lot of times we don't ask for subs unless there was something happen. Otherwise, you sort of want to talk to the guy who played either all 90 minutes or was there from the start and that type of thing. So I wouldn't have requested Chicharito either. But they requested Mark Delgado. Well, apparently Chicharito asked who was going to go over and do the TV hit afterwards. And Chicharito goes, who's doing it? And they're like, oh, well, Mark's going to do it. And he was like, no, I'm doing it. And that wasn't like, hey, I don't want Mark to get press coverage, because I think some people will take it that way. Oh, man, Chicharito is just hogging all the press coverage. That wasn't it. The reason he went over to do it was because he wanted to send a message, and he wanted to send a message out to the fans, and he wanted to send a message out to all the players. He did that on purpose, right? And so I think there's always this question mark about how much of a leader Chicharito is. That's him going and saying, I'm going to send a message to the fans and the players that this is unacceptable and that we need to get better, and it all needs to get better, right? There he is.
Okay, he likes you better now.
Yeah, I mean,
forgive you.
But that's something there. Listen, this is all, of course, put next to a worldview, Kevin, of Zlatan Ibrahimovic winning Serie A with AC Milan. Right. And there was a speech after that where Zlatan said, nobody believed in us and we did it together and the whole deal. It was very much a leadership role. And everybody's like, oh, and, the LA Galaxy couldn't handle Zlatan. And here he did it, in Milan with a young team. And they sort of bought into it. So that's all juxtapositioned against each other. None of this stuff happens in a vacuum when it does. But this is the type of leader that Chicha is. He's like, I'm going to take the heat. I will go talk.
And also, Zlatan said that Efrain Alvarez was the best player in MLS. So that's
a strike against Zlatan. What does Zlatan know, right?
Let's not forget that. By the way, the way that you approach those questions afterwards is the wise way, and it's the smart way. And here's why. Fans want to come in and say, oh, my God, Efrain Alvarez had a horrible game. You go into a press conference and you say, man, your quarterback sucked today. He only completed half his passes. You don't know the wide receiver fell down, ran the wrong pattern. There's some things that we don't know.
And we're never going to know. Yeah.
And maybe Efrain Alvarez had a bad game, or maybe the guys that were supposed to rotate around him were not in the right position. He was stuck on no man's land, had nowhere to pass the ball. We don't know all this stuff. That's why when you ask the question, what did you think of Efrain? Yeah. And then you get the answer of, we know when they're blowing smoke. We know when I didn't see anything wrong with him. Okay, then it was like watching a different game. It
was like Victor Vazquez. Whenever I asked him who's going to create when he's not on the field, I knew the answer he was probably going to give. But what if the answer is, you know what, you're right. We need to get better at that. Efra's not doing his job, blah, 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 the whole deal. Maybe he decides that that's a point. Victor decided not to take that. But I know, listen, there's some really smart people on this team. When they know things, right? Victor Vazquez knows what's going on. He knows he's the only creator out there. Greg Vanney knows it right now too, right? He's trying to manufacture another creator somewhere. However that ends up doing it. By the way, if Greg really wants a defensive mid, get somebody like, once Carlos Harvey is set, then put Harvey next to Ravelison and move Delgado forward. Show me that you can at least get something out of that shows me that you're correct, like almost as a test before you're going to go out there and get a defensive midfielder. The other argument for Vanney is that with $1.6 million, which is what we expect, a max TAM player, right? Can you get the type of game-changing player that you need on the world market for $1.6 million? Probably not, right? As in terms of a central attacking midfielder, right? So how do you manufacture a larger hole for that? Well, Douglas, you'd have to trade somebody like Kevin Cabral, or you have to trade somebody like Douglas Costa. You can't buy out right now. Okay, buying out is only something you can do at the beginning of the season. Technically, you can, but you don't get the roster space back or the salary cap space back. So you would have to have an additional $612,500, which is what a designated player costs against the salary cap, in order to do some of that stuff.
Let's go back to the winter when you were asking about the Costa question. And maybe that was the guy that Greg wanted all along. Certainly, he talked Costa up really well.
Right.
If it wasn't the guy he wanted, he really rehearsed those lines. I just thought this winter there was a lot of momentum building around Pavone. I think there was a lot of heat around that. The Galaxy spent money doing their due diligence, checking into the court case, everything else. I felt the momentum was pushing for Pavone to come back. And if I had to guess, and again, this is a guess, I don't know. If I had to guess, I would have thought that many people on the coaching staff, maybe Greg, would have preferred Pavone. He has a history here, has a history in MLS, all that kind of stuff. So how would this team be different? Do you think it would be better or worse with Pavone instead of Costa?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there was momentum building there, and I think they realized that they weren't going to get the answer to those questions about the court case and everything in time.
No, they had to move on.
Yeah.
I'm not arguing that they made the wrong decision. They made the right decision. But I'm just wondering if things had worked out differently, would this be a different team? Did they maybe back off a little? I think they backed off because of the court thing, but did they think, well, we got Dejan here, and those two guys are going to be redundant, and they're both going to have long, they're both young guys, will be around a while. Clearly, it was the court situation that stopped that. But do you think the Galaxy would be better with Pavone instead of Costa?
Yeah, I mean, duh. I mean, come on,
okay.
Right? Yeah, of course they would be, because and certainly, listen, I think they would still have a midfield problem, right? Which is who's going to play sort of in the center of midfield, but maybe they would put Alvarez there and it wouldn't be as big of an issue whenever you have Pavone creating from that side. I still think that they have a problem on the opposite side, which is that, that Grandsir hasn't been good there, and that Cabral hasn't been good whenever he's been playing. So you have to choose between those two. One of those guys gets to play. Cabral's going to get the start on Wednesday based on how they rotated around things. So, it's fairly certain Cabral starts. It's fairly certain Costa starts. It's fairly certain that Chicha starts. So those guys are going to start. I think Victor Vazquez is probably going to start, even though that's tough for him to sort of recover from that. So, if you don't, then you're going to put Alvarez in the center and try to do something with that again, which we haven't seen work.
Who could be your answer on the left? He's played there before, and once Gaspar can go 90 minutes and feels good, and with Leerdam there, they could play Raheem Edwards as a winger.
Yes,
he's
correct.
played there before.
He has. He lacks a finishing touch. That's the big knock on Edwards. I mean, to me, Edwards does a lot of good in his position, sort of getting forward and running overloads and being able to dribble in between. But let's be honest, the assists were there early. They haven't been. And some of that, I think, is him trying to dribble too deep into the box now and sort of find that wonder goal that eventually he's going to hit. He's eventually going to hit one. He's a defender, so it's going to be exciting whenever it happens. It'll win the goal of the week or whatever it is when it happens. But the bottom line is, I don't think you expect that very often. I'm still concerned about the finishing. Greg talked about the finishing and saying, hey, these guys need to be ready for one-touch finishing. There were a couple one-touch finishes that just weren't up to par. So that's what we get. It's funny. I was doing graphics for this. I'll show everybody how I screwed up here. I have the LA Galaxy actually scoring a goal again in the Houston game, which they did not do. So it's 3-0. Don't be swayed by my horrible graphics, which I believe are up on the on YouTube as well. I really did screw that up. I put all Houston goals down there, but somehow I screwed up the other thing. It was a busy day.
I think Ferreira was the player of the week, right?
He was. The LA Galaxy just continue to make Texas players' careers, apparently. Ferreira also leads goals now in Major League Soccer. I believe. I believe that's true. He has 9 now. So he's up near the top there. And he had 2 assists. He was player of the week, 2 assists as well. He played very well. Very well. It's crazy to think that Houston played a fairly dominant game and the Galaxy had 73% possession. That's crazy. And when we look at expected goals, again, the goal, they're actually pretty close. They're closer than that, by the way, because there's a round up and a round down that's happening, but roughly there. The Galaxy had 16 shots to Houston's 14. Galaxy had 6 shots on target, 1.3 to 1.5. The biggest chance was the Alvarez chance in the box for the LA Galaxy. That and the Leerdam chance were the 2 best chances.
That was the one that went right at Clark, right?
That was the one Clark saved. So that was the one that got played in by Joveljic, and Araujo hit it with his left foot across the goal. And I have to imagine that if he just lets that run to his right foot out wide, that he scores that pretty easily because Clark can't get to the near post in time. So he sort of hits it back towards him where he's already there. The fact that Alvarez continues to run around his right foot, though, it's getting pretty boring. Overall, I mean, that's kind of the way. That's the LA Galaxy season is summed up in 2 things. And somebody put this on my Twitter. It was one, Alvarez dribbles the ball out of bounds past the touchline, and the other one was Alvarez runs around his right foot. A lot of that is where the LA Galaxy are struggling right now. I like the chance creation because I think it's been better. There was somebody put in our Discord expected goals over the last 5 games across the league, right? New York City FC leads that number 1, 1.96. LAFC at 1.94 expected goals per 90, right? So you can keep going down through here and sort of looking. The LA Galaxy are in the middle of the pack, so not horrible, but not great, right? At 1.4. 1.4 expected goals per 90 right now. And so they basically had 7 expected goals. And they haven't scored those goals. That's the whole thing that I sort of want to get. It's not like they've scored 7 goals. They haven't. They get, 1 here, 1 there. They haven't been converting their chances. So I thought that was interesting. Other thing is, the LA Galaxy are not the worst team in Major League Soccer over the last 5 games. Okay, but they're not one of like the good teams either. Who is, Kevin, over the last 5 games, who has the most points in Major League Soccer?
New York City.
No. FC Cincinnati.
Wow.
They have 12 points,
unexpected.
right? They have 12 points in the last 5 games. Who is the 2 worst teams? Who, if you had to guess right now?
If I had to be a guess, I would say Vancouver and Miami.
No, Chicago and Toronto over the last 5 games have scored 1 point. Okay? The Galaxy have 4 points over the last 5 games. And that means that Minnesota also has 4 points, and they are second worst in the league. So the Galaxy have not been good over their last 5 games. All right.
What does it say about Bob Bradley, that Toronto is struggling so much? Did he not know what he was getting into?
That Toronto's a crappy team and they need to rebuild a whole bunch? I mean, that's sort of... I mean, Greg Vanney left for a reason, dude. I mean, right? I mean, he saw the writing on the wall there and he was like, that's gone. By the way, my favorite tweet so far was somebody figured out how to fix the LA Galaxy. And that was just bring Todd Donovan down from Sacramento to be the general manager / club president. And that would fix all the things, which I think I'm for. I'm there, right? Todd Donovan, smart guy, right?
Well, it sounded like you want to replace Greg Vanney too.
No, Greg gets to be head coach. He gets to stay.
Okay.
He's not a GM now. He just pretends to play. It's like he slept at a Holiday Inn last night. That's what Greg is doing with like the GM role. It's like, oh, I slept at a Holiday Inn Express last night, so I'm good. No, I think coaches need a general manager. That's all.
I think the Bradley thing, and I mean, we're not going to get into it because I haven't looked into it at all. But just the record, it shows how much organization matters. The front office that's around you. It's just not money. It's just not hiring the flavor of the week. Bob Bradley had an organization around him at LAFC. Bruce got one around him in New England. Bradley is the same coach that he was here. He's not doing well in Toronto. Go ahead. What was
I just remembered something else. I was having another conversation. Again, I complained about sort of having to go back down to the TV studio, but they gave us tables where we could work down there, so that was kind of fun. So we did that. And you run into people. You talk to people. You find out little things. I already shared a couple stories that I found out from just walking down there. Here's another story that I was sort of talking to somebody about. I was like, oh, hey, I go, what do you think about like what the Galaxy are doing with analytics and numbers and that type of thing? And they're like, man, the stuff they are doing on the fitness side is crazy. Like, and they are. It's heavily invested on the fitness side. They track everybody's movements. They know how hard they can push it in training. They understand active recoveries. They're doing all the things that all the major clubs are doing around the world, which is knowing where the physical limits are of every player and knowing how to help them recover. And then, Greg Vanney can get a report and it says, well, these are the guys who recovered the best. And he can look at that for going up against LAFC and be like, okay, these are my guys who are probably in the best shape. Oh, this guy was on the bubble of starting. So now he's looks like he's good and this guy isn't. So I'm going to switch that and I'm going to put that in. Amazing stuff what they're doing. The analytics on the health and safety and physical recoveries is something that's there. And then I said, yeah, but what about like on the recruiting side? Like whenever you're going to scout players, like you're supposed to have a whole department that does that too, right? That are combing through analytics and trying to find undervalued players in leagues. That way you can find a central attacking midfielder for $1.6 million that's playing somewhere in the Austrian first league in mid-table. Like, and crickets. Well, you remember the story about how Siani got here. Ziggy had just come in. Van Dam left, if you remember. They needed a center back, and Ziggy went to somebody in the front office, I guess, scouting, and said, "Where's the list of our center back prospects?" And they said, "What list?" And Ziggy said, "Every team in the league has a list of guys that they are on their radar that they know that if we need a center back, we can go get them. We don't have a list like that." Yeah.
And so they wound up with Michael Siani.
Yes. Absolutely true. That's a Jerome Miri signing, by the way. We talked a lot about Jerome Miri and sort of his ability to connect interested parties across France and the United States, and he brings a lot of players into Major League Soccer.
That's how you say it. Another way to say it is he funnels his guys to certain teams.
Into teams, and he does it all across Major League Soccer, but especially the LA Galaxy have been heavily dependent on that. So this is good. I want to break this up, and then we'll talk a little bit about the LAFC game, and we can get out of here. Fernie in the chat room says, Josh, is it true the Galaxy don't watch game film? No, it's 100% false. There was a quote in The Athletic that said that the Galaxy didn't have a dedicated space to watch game film, right? And that's what the quote came down as. So I was like, that's weird. I go, but it also kind of doesn't surprise me whenever you look at all the rooms that are downstairs and how cluttered it is underneath the stadium that maybe there's not a dedicated room. So I reached out. I was like, I'll just talk to some players and ask them. I'm like, hey, what about this? Where do you guys watch? Where do you guys watch game film? Where did you guys watch game film? I spanned it across a couple different teams, blah, blah, the whole deal. And they were like, no, we watch game film all the time. It was like, but they have TVs in the locker room, right? And Kevin, we've been in the locker room. There's a giant TV there. So a lot of times they would watch game film in the locker room. There's also a lounge that's connected right next to the locker room that sort of comes out, which we're never allowed in, but we can peer in, we can see, and there's like 3 TVs in there as well. They would watch that in there as well. So the thing that you have to focus in on the Athletic quote, which is probably true, is the Galaxy didn't have a dedicated space to watch game film, and apparently now they do. But before, they could watch game film at their lockers, or they could watch it in the lounge, or that type of thing. So there was plenty of places for them to watch game film, and they did watch game film.
With that new thing on fitness track and everything, I wonder if they still have post-game pizza all the time like they used to.
Yes.
That's probably not oh, they do?
Yes,
okay.
You know how I can tell you? Damien and I got pizza last night. They had some left over, and Vicky at the LA Galaxy press, because Damien and I decided to work downstairs in the TV studio. We're still ironing out bugs of this whole, getting down the TV studio. But Vicky goes, hey, did you guys want to work down here? And we're like, yeah, is that okay? And then she's like, yeah, sure, no problems. She goes, how long do you guys need? And we're like, oh, hey, we'll probably be out of here in 30 or 45 minutes. And she's like, okay, no problems. So she walks, I think it was Kevin who actually asked us that. So Kevin walks out the door, right? And literally the security guy comes in 30 seconds later. It's like, you guys are going to have to leave. We're like, wait, we were just told we could stay. No, you have to leave. You have to leave right now. And we're like, no, literally they just walked out the door. So we eventually got it. And so Vicky made it so we could stay down there till about 8:30. And then they had to escort us out. Because, we're downstairs. Really? Oh, yeah, we were downstairs. Don't you know? I mean, it's like, Kevin, you and I have wandered around downstairs so many times whenever it comes to all this stuff. It's always funny whenever it happens. But anyway, we got escorted out of tower. But Vicky came in afterwards and she goes, I got you set till 8:30. You're fine. She goes, did you guys want some pizza? Because there's leftover pizza from the team. I'm like, oh, yeah, cool. So, yeah.
Was it good? Was it good?
No, it was cold by the time it came to us, but it was fine. It was fine pizza. By the way,
did Jovan ever pick up the pizza you bought for him? Oh, I'm not supposed to tell him about that.
Patrick, $10 super chat says, free Mutatu, put him on the left next to our new South American central attacking midfielder. Yeah, the Mutatu thing is just, it's a long story. I don't know where it's going to go. I have a feeling we're headed towards a resolution here soon, so hopefully we can share it. It's for good reason that we're not for right now. But that's going to come to an end here relatively shortly. So we'll see if we can talk. It's one of those things that we really need to sit in front of Greg and have him explain it. And that's going to be the only way that it all sort of comes to fruition and everybody knows what's going on.
But someone didn't do their homework.
I mean, yeah, across years and years and years and years and years. Yes. So Anthony, Tony, by the way, says, what about analytics? No, that was it. I gave you all the answer on the analytics side of the scouting and stuff like that. Maybe that changes.
There's other analytics.
Maybe that changes. Yeah. There's different parts of analytics. I forget how they there's different words for it. And I always get it wrong. And then I get a DM from Sean Stephanie tells me I'm wrong. And
I think they do use some, because Greg came up with some bizarre stats last year about where they begin to bring the attack from, how deep they are, and stuff that I had never heard before, stuff you can't just get by going to stats.com.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where we get all of our stats, is stats.com. That's a good one. Looking real quick at the LA Galaxy and sort of the mediocrity that surrounded the LA Galaxy on the game against Minnesota. Just looking at Joveljic was the best player, 7.0. Whenever it comes to Bond at 4.5 is a pretty rough take there, but it is what it is. Cough up 3 goals and give up a huge rebound, and that's what you're going to get. Efrain Alvarez.
Who was the best player again?
Joveljic for the LA Galaxy.
Just saying. Okay.
No, he was. I agree.
Okay. All right.
Just remember, please don't, because people also who have been listening to this podcast this entire time will then forget the entire part where I said Joveljic was great in this game. I thought he was really good.
Just saying, he'd be starting on my team.
Yeah, I'm sure he would be up top. No, you wait. You want to play him underneath Chicharito? That's right. You want him to be the creator. Okay, cool. Just wanted to check.
You know, he'll get a lot more goals as the creator than he was sitting on the bench.
I think he's going to get a lot more playing time.
Okay.
It was interesting. It was interesting. Greg Vanney talked about Derek Williams. He talked about Javier Hernandez, Javi, which is another side note. We're talking to Greg Vanney, and Javier Hernandez walks right through the TV studio as we're talking to Greg Vanney, and he mentions Javi as he's walking through. Right, so it was one of those that Javi didn't get the memo yet that the TV studio was like back in use, and he was cutting through in order to leave, and so he was cutting through, and he walks right through the TV studio. Remember who used to cut through the TV studio a lot, Kevin? Go ahead. Do you remember? Gio. There you go. Gio.
But Gio would do it when we weren't there.
Yes, and he would do it in order to get around fans. That's the whole idea, is that you don't have to walk through the Champions League and all that. Yeah, Champions League.
Did Chicharito say hi to you?
He was sort of like, oh, like one of those was like, oh, didn't realize there were a whole bunch of people in here. It was one of those. So anyway, that's something. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I want to cover here. The only major stat thing that I'm sort of watching right now is just the home points. The LA Galaxy averaging 1.50 points per game at home, not even close to good enough. Their average is 1.87 at home, and in the good years, they're routinely above, that 1.88 around the 2 mark at home, and they are not there right now. And again, if we go look at 1.57 on the road, it's not a dramatic difference in terms of what they're doing on the road, but it's harder to play on the road, harder to win on the road, except if you're the LA Galaxy right now. Apparently they play better on the road and get more points out of it. So 11 points right now for the LA Galaxy on the road, 1.57 points per game. Whenever you look at it, let's see. Can we show this one? Yeah. There's a dip. There's a dip that I'm watching, and I sort of plotting this against other MLS Cup years, and that's always dangerous just to even limit it to that. But watching the dip and the LA Galaxy sort of playing, they're still well above the 2012 year. And the only thing I will tell you is that the 2012 year kicked it into gear. And everybody says like, oh man, the 2012 year was, they were really bad to begin with, and then they kicked it into gear at the end of the summer. No, the 2012 LA Galaxy kicked it into gear in June. That's whenever they started doing it. So you're not that far away from it. I'm just saying that there's still plenty of time for the LA Galaxy to sort of kick it into gear and be a very good team. Just because you're seeing them where they're at right now, 13 games in, still a lot of games there. If you look at the dive the LA Galaxy took last year, that started in August, end of August, right? So perhaps the dive is happening sooner, Kevin, and they decided to get it out of the way faster this year, so that way they can then return to playing good, right? That's the answer.
Well, 2012, let me see. Beckham, Donovan, Keane, Omar Gonzalez, AJ De La Garza. You had Sarvis, Juninho. Yeah, I see the similarities.
Right.
No problem.
No creators in those guys either, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah. They just manufactured goals all season.
LA Galaxy on pace to score 34 goals. That's not great. 13 goals in 13 games, so 34 goals in scoring. They had a 52? 56, 54, something like that last year. I could probably look it up.
Yeah, but look at the goal differential. Why did they not go to the playoffs last year? Does anyone remember? Raise your hand if you remember.
Oh, it was goal differential. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Well, it was also that RSL cheated.
I think.
RSL cheated.
Yeah.
Yes. 36.6 right now in terms of goals given up in a 34 game season. That's still incredibly good. Don't freak out about that yet. Let's see sort of how the defense settles and see what happens. A non-league game coming up midweek is something that you can sort of look at. It'll be excluded from all the stats. U.S. Open Cup stuff, it always is. This is the only thing that changed for me. Longest single season winless streak per year, and right now the LA Galaxy have 3 winless, and so that's something to sort of watch as it continues. Last year the record was 9. In 2017 it was 10. So just keep an eye on that. The 10 started with 3 as well. So did the 9, right? Like you have to get to 3 and then it goes to 4, 5, 6. Eventually it ends in 9. But I'm just saying.
Does it always happen that way?
It does every single time.
Oh, yeah.
And then the last thing I want to get to, scoring first and allowing first. It's so important for the LA Galaxy. I know Nikki covered it on Spectrum to lead, and Greg has been paying attention to it. Everybody is. It's such a huge predictor about whether the LA Galaxy do it. I'm sure it's a predictor league wide. It is fairly easy to say you score first, you win first. Here's the problem. The LA Galaxy have given up the first goal in 4 games, Kevin, and only 4 games, but 3 of those have come at home. And that means they've been outscored 7-1 in those games at home whenever they have given up the first goal. That's pretty critical not to be in those positions, especially at home. So the LA Galaxy are 0-4-0 right now whenever they give up the first goal, and 0-3-0 at home when they give up the first goal. On the flip side of that, whenever you look at the LA Galaxy and them winning the games, they are outscoring opponents 12-5, and in 8 games so far this year, they have scored first. Their record is 6-1-1 whenever they do that. The only game they lost was the game against Seattle where they scored first. That was on the road, and they ended up losing 3-2.
You know, there are some teams, I think Liverpool has certainly won, and LAFC's won, who, you know, in the last 20 minutes is like the most dangerous part of the game. Those teams are hard to play against. You think we'll just park the bus the last 20 minutes, we'll get a lead and hold on to it. It doesn't seem to work out that way. I don't know what it is about those teams, but you just knew that on Sunday that Liverpool was going to score a bunch of goals late because they always do. I wonder why teams have that ability to sort of turn it on whenever they need to late in the game, where other teams, you're right, Galaxy score first, and you know, does it change the way that they play?
Yeah, I mean, it does. I think that they settle because they're so good at keeping the ball away from people. It's a real advantage to them to score and then keep the ball away from people, right? That's the idea of how that's supposed to work. And I think that their defense is solid enough that they can withstand that whenever they're in lower blocks. So it makes a lot of sense there. But I'll tell you this right now, good teams can win from losing positions. I think Liverpool had 20 points from losing positions this year.
They were remarkable.
That's ridiculous, right? I mean, that's unheard of.
Well, except they had 92 points on the season. So
yeah. I mean, they were also really good whenever they didn't give up the first goal, right? So I mean, that's Liverpool. I would say in MLS, that's more of a sword that you don't want to play. You know, everybody remembers the, you know, Goonies Never Say Die type of run that San Jose had one year. And it was, you know, Alan Gordon and Steven Lenhart. And it was just this team that refused to give up and refused to die. And they had all sorts of points from losing positions because they would come back late in goals. And I always said, you know, that's great until you get to the playoffs. You can't do that in the playoffs. You can't survive that way in the playoffs. So having a team that gives up goals is not, it gives up goals early is not a way to a championship, not Major League Soccer. And I think that that's a real detriment to some teams seeing that they do that. You can't be a team that always comes back. It's nice to have the ability to come back, which the Galaxy don't have right now, right? Again, good teams can come back. We're not saying the Galaxy are a good team, right? I think they're an okay team. I'm not swayed by the last 2 home games. I'm looking at the whole thing and I'm saying I think they could be okay, but they have a huge problem in the creation side of things. And if that doesn't get fixed, they're not going to be able to hold the defensive side of things forever. They can't just win every game 1-0. That's very difficult to do. A good team can do that. The Galaxy aren't good there. If they can start scoring goals, Kevin, and start converting chances, they could move back into the good category for me.
Yeah, they're on pace for 34 goals.
Yeah.
From a $12 million attacking expenditure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but they're also on pace to give up like 36 goals. I mean, it would be right now we have them at a -2 goal differential, and that defensive side of things would be a tremendous improvement. It would be a 20+ goal, 25 goal improvement year over year. So don't give up on the defense yet. I'm not there. I'm not ready to give up on that. I think that they've proven they're okay, especially against some good teams, especially on the road. So that's it. Let's get.
Can we give up on the offense yet?
I think the offense has given up on the offense. Let's talk about the LA Galaxy's U.S. Open Cup round of 16 match coming up against LAFC. This game is on Wednesday, May 25th, 2022. 7:30 p.m. is the scheduled start time. Kickoff is also scheduled right around that, so expect a couple minutes after, but 7:30 p.m. right around that. It can be found on ESPN+. I am not expecting... I would have expected that somehow this got spun onto ESPN because ESPN has the rights to the games for the U.S. Open Cup. And for me, it would sort of be like, well, they have a chance at El Trafico and they could go nationally televised. Technically, it's nationally televised on ESPN+, right? Because you can get it everywhere and there's no blackouts. So that's something I would have thought. I do not have high hopes for whoever they decide to give this game in terms of announcing and all that fun stuff. I don't have any insight. I'm just telling you that I have very little faith knowing how the U.S. Open Cup announcing games are usually handed out and taken care of. So just be prepared for that if you're not going to the game.
And I kind of understand what you're saying. This game definitely is probably better than whatever else ESPN is showing. But, a lot of times those broadcast contracts, they say we got a U.S. Open game. they don't know when they make the decision. It could be, it's Sacramento Republic against, I don't know, against Oklahoma City or something. They don't know what it's going to be. So they probably got rodeo or something else on that they signed a contract with, said you will be on primetime ESPN. And so they really can't make that change.
Yeah. No.
But do you think is it going to sell out?
I think so. I think it's going to be very full. I will say this. I was given a warning, Kevin. Not an official warning, just a general warning, and I will pass it along. Do not expect this to be as home friendly as it should be for the LA Galaxy.
I would agree with that. I think there's a lot of tickets available.
Yeah. I really think that I know there's tickets available. I know things are going to get sold. I know people are going to sell. I think it's going to be very full, especially for a Wednesday night. I think it's more than 23,000. So you're close to selling out at 25, right? You're 25, 164, I think, or 764. I can't remember exactly, but whatever. 25, 164 gets you a sellout. So I think you're going to be close to that. But I think there's going to be a lot of LAFC fans.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the closest to a 50-50 since that game in Florida during the COVID Cup.
Yeah, I really think that there's going to be a lot of LAFC fans there. So, keep your head on a swivel and calm yourself down, everybody. Okay, it's a U.S. Open Cup game. All right, there it goes. LAFC coming into this, we've talked about it. They won their last game against Columbus. It was a rain delayed game. How many did it get delayed? Like 4 or 5 hours. It was really pressed out, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was delayed about 3 hours to start. Then they played like 3 minutes, and then they delayed it another 70 minutes.
Yeah, so it was a whole thing. And Vela ended up, I think, coming on at halftime, right? So they did rotate a little bit.
They did rotate a little bit. They rotated kind of like the Galaxy did when you think about it. If you think of Vela and Chicharito, and they got both their goals late in the second half from guys that were on the bench. I think in an ideal situation with the rain and the muddy track and all that, I think they probably didn't want to play those guys, and they had to. Kind of the same thing I think Greg Vanney went. I think in Greg Vanney's blueprint, Chicharito had Sunday off and didn't get Sunday off because they needed they needed to press.
I don't know. He said he had a set of subs sort of ready to come in and sort of doing it. I always thought that those guys would play a little bit just because I don't think the Galaxy have enough real subs, especially whenever you're right. Maybe they changed that real early once they realized they were down 1-0 and they were like, well, it looks like these guys are going to have to play. But I always felt like maybe there would be some second half minutes for those guys. So they did.
But on both sides, Sasha talked about this. We don't want to look ahead. Once the pairings came out, he immediately said, I think within a couple of days, we're not looking ahead. We know that game is there. Well, you just told us it's there, so you're already looking ahead.
Not only that, but it was the most important game. We all know that. Sasha said it. The most important game of the month is the one, is the U.S. Open Cup against LAFC. He said it, which is good, by the way, because I don't like when people, oh, no, we're not paying attention. You're paying attention.
Yeah, I think both locker rooms, once this came out, realized that maybe the Columbus game wasn't the most important game in this cycle. And, LAFC actually winds up with the better schedule on this because they traveled to Columbus, but they're playing Columbus. Then they got San Jose on the other end of this. So the Galaxy is really a game they can focus on. You look at the Galaxy, they have a team they're fighting for top of the table, and then they're going to go Austin second in the table right now at the end of this.
Yeah, but at the same time, the Galaxy didn't have to travel. They got all the home games. So there's advantages and disadvantages of everything.
But the road games is where they play better. So there.
Yeah, well, that doesn't bode well for the Open Cup game on Wednesday. So anyway, I'm not aware of any security protocols in place. I expect that there will be some, sort of like you can't go back behind Angel City Brigade, that type of thing. They won't allow that if you're wearing LAFC gear. But I expect it to be a lot more open than it has been. So just understand that going in. I think it'll be fine. I expect everybody to behave themselves, but this is going to be. It's such an interesting test to throw in the middle of this, and it really is at the expense of the Houston game and the Austin game for the LA Galaxy. If they win this game and they get to move on, past this quarterfinals, experience here, then they're into something. They're getting a lot closer to being somewhere where they could win a trophy.
They play the winner. They would play the winner of San Jose, Sacramento Republic.
Right.
So whoever wins that game, that has to be a winnable game for the Galaxy. And if they win that, then they're in the final. They're playing for a trophy.
Not only that, but the Galaxy would host that game. They already know they would host, right? So the winner of the game against the LA Galaxy hosts against the San Jose Republic game too. So whoever wins that game gets to host. So the Galaxy would have another home game against San Jose or Sacramento Republic if they get through that. That's the thing. So we would know that already. We already know the hosting for the next round whenever that happens. All right. So that's why I think the H1 position was so important for the LA Galaxy, which was you get 2 home games if you win the next 2 games, right? So you get this home game and then you get another home game in Open Cup. And I have said for years, Kevin, that the teams who end up winning this usually get a plethora of home games. You usually go on the road for 1 or 2, but that's it. The teams that end up playing 3 or 4 on the road, most of them never make it to 3 because they're going to lose that game.
Well, and so how big is this game? If they beat LAFC, you got to think whoever advances, Sacramento or San Jose, coming to Dignity Health Sports Park, big advantage for the Galaxy. It will come after the international break,
right? So
that they'll get to rest and everybody will be healthy. Even Victory Vazquez will be healthy. They win that game, they're into U.S. Open Cup final. We roll the dice there. 90 minutes, anything can happen. We don't have no idea who they'd be playing, but they're playing for a trophy. And if they win that, they haven't won the U.S. Open Cup, I think, since 2005. If they win that, they're in the Champions League. I mean, this is a pretty big game Wednesday when you look at what the
path is. Yeah, what the path is set for the Galaxy to make something of this. And so that's why it's a big game. That's why you rotate on. By the way, I'm also sick of it. People will say, "Oh, play this." All he does is play the same starting 11, and then he doesn't. And there's like, "Well, of course he made those changes because he's just rotating." Well, yeah, of course he's rotating. That's what he's going to do. Too many minutes. He said he was being careful with Derek Williams because Derek Williams got injured around this time last year. He said he was being careful with Chicharito because Chicharito got injured around this time last year. He said they were being careful with Douglas Costa because this is the first time Douglas Costa played back-to-back 90-minute games, and he said like a year. Right? They're aware of all of these things when they're doing that. So it was smart to rotate. They are being cautious with Chicha. They're being cautious with Derek Williams. They're being cautious with Costa. You want to see that because we all talked about this before, Kevin. We said, hey, Chicharito needs to top out around 2,000 minutes this year. Well, he's going to rapidly hit 2,000 minutes very, very quickly if the LA Galaxy don't start getting him some blows every once in a while. And I think that's where Joveljic comes in and plays more minutes. Absolutely, 100%.
Well, unless I misunderstood, this was my question to Greg, and maybe I misunderstood the answer, but you were there, you heard it. When you talk about rotating, I've always heard coaches in every sport where they like to keep players in sort of pairs or trios. So in other words, Chicharito tends to play a lot with Cabral and doesn't ever play with Dejan. And so when you rotate, you need to be aware of that you're rotating pairs, not just one. You're not sending one guy out to play with a guy he's never played with, that you substitute 2 or 3 guys in. So the player that you really want to be effective is surrounded by people he's comfortable with. That's another thing. When you say, well, Greg kept 3 starters on the bench, probably kept 1 starter, and then his 2 buddies, his 2 wingmen stayed on the bench as well.
Yes, and Greg sort of said no, but yes on that. So he threw you a bone. I think he didn't want to be like, hey, you moron in the back who's on Skype or on Zoom, whatever it was. No, that's not how we look. That's not how we do it. Yes and no. He rotated, but he also kept guys who were sort of have played next to each other. But by the way, Joveljic and Chicha have played together a bunch this year. Just not a total ton of minutes, but they've been next to each other a bunch of times. At least 4 or 5 times, I think, so far. So anyway, that's it. Are we good? We're good. We don't want to talk about this anymore, right? It's almost 9:30. We've been talking for 90 minutes about a crappy Houston game.
Snoopy says it's time to go. He's nodding his head there.
You have so many things in that office. I'm worried about
toys.
You. I mean,
Chicharito coming back.
You really need to learn your left and right whenever there's a mirror too.
Yeah, I do. I know.
It's like you start moving in one direction when you don't see it going that way. You need to go the other way. Okay. All right. There we go.
Kevin De Bruyne and Chicharito are going away now.
That's absolutely not anything we need to talk about anymore. All right. If you're looking for Mr. Kevin Baxter on Twitter, it's at KBaxter11. Head on over to LA Times where you can find all this writing. Kevin will be there on Wednesday. I'll be there on Wednesday. Sophie will be there on Wednesday. We'll have a show on Thursday. Then Josh goes on vacation. So Thursday will be the last show for a little while, about a week and a half or so. And then Josh will be on vacation. So no recap of the Austin game or anything like that. Keep that in mind. All right. I'm on vacation the whole day. If you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at Guesman, JGUESMAN, and of course at Galaxy Podcast, cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can go ahead and follow all of the post-game press conferences, all of our podcasts, all that fun stuff. Anything I feel like writing is up there as well, cornerofthegalaxy.com. All right. That does it. Like, subscribe to this video if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe to the podcast. Tell your friends about podcasts, all that fun stuff. We really, really appreciate it. All right. For Mr. Kevin the Panda Baxter, I'm Josh Pato Guesman. You've been listening. You've been watching to Corner of the Galaxy from the box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.